Hey everyone, Darren Lynch, founder and CEO of Irish Titan, here with another whiskey shot. This is one I've been looking forward to maybe more than any others. No offense to any of the other guests, but I'm here with Tink Taylor from dotdigital, who is one of my longest standing ecosystem friends, near and dear to me. Dotdigital was one of the first companies that started to believe in Irish Titan, and that sort of thing matters to me. So Tink, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. My pleasure.
Yeah. Why don't you introduce yourself, talk about dotdigital a little bit, just to level set for our audience.
Yes, so I'm Tink Taylor, the founder and president of dotdigital. We've been running something like 20 odd years now to kind of show my age. I have a pretty rounded view on this industry. Yeah, we started as dotmailer, as most people will have known us then, which was an email marketing platform. We transitioned into calling ourselves dotdigital when we went truly multi-channel. So that's kind of where we are today, but we're just in the process of rebranding at the moment as a CXDP, which is sort of the customer experience of data and the CDP side of the world. We kind of found that so many organizations out there like G2 Crowd and Forrester started putting this in their CDP reports because of our capabilities and our ability to handle data. So we thought we'd better take notice of what everyone's saying that we can do. So I think we're about to sort of rebadge a little bit to say, look, here's our multi-channel product, and here, if you want to go deeper into data, here's a CDXDP product as well.
Cool. Thanks for that rundown, Tink, and thanks again for making time today. And before we get to the actual meat of the content, so Tink and I have had a lot of fun over the years, a lot of great conversations, shared a lot of drinks, and in these whiskey shots, I've actually yet to share any whiskey with anyone because they're usually early in the morning. And I was going to make an exception this year, or for this whiskey shot, and I have some Irish whiskey handy, but Tink is behaving himself today because we just got back from Shop Talk not too long ago, which we'll talk about. But I thought that'd be a fun little segue into covering Shop Talk. We were just there. I think the e-commerce industry has been through a lot the last couple of years. And it's sort of interesting to see how things are taking shape with starting to attend shows again, hear what the merchants are doing, hear what the tech partners are doing, just to sort of see what the fingerprints are in the ecosystem. So Tink, with Shop Talk in our very recent rearview mirror, what are some of your thoughts and observations?
Yeah, I'm glad to avoid that whiskey. And I have got one omission for you. You gave me an amazing whiskey glass, which I gave to Becky, who's now with you, to package back to me, and it never arrived. So
it didn't? All right. I know a guy. I'll make sure
ask her where it went. But I'm glad to avoid the whiskey. I was obviously at Adobe Summit the week before Shop Talk, so it's been a long 2 weeks in Vegas, which is a lot for any human, I think.
Correct.
And it's quite interesting the amount of changes that has happened. My first thought was, especially Shop Talk was really well attended. There was a buzz. I think it's the first time in almost 4 years that the ecosystem were able to physically get together. Like you and I, we shared a few beers one night. We would have shared more, but it was just too many people to see and with. So that was wonderful. It's so good to see that there's still such a vibrant and positive ecosystem, and the contributors of that are still very much in that ecosystem. I thought from an agency perspective, I thought it's quite interesting. There's been a ton of acquisitions that have occurred. So kind of the focus and maybe the leadership of some of those agencies such as yours have dramatically changed. Some maybe not for the better, actually. I think that probably puts Irish Titans in quite a good position. I think the leaderships are being maybe pulled away, or maybe their target market has changed to suit their new parent companies or their new owners. So I think that was quite an interesting observation. Tech partners, something we were discussing slightly off air. We've seen a number of layoffs through some of these companies. The macroeconomic environment has really sort of led to a number of investors that were sort of holding up a number of these tech companies to sort of say, look, the money's running out, and you need to become a profitable business. So it's really easy to run a business for your tech company, profitable way to try and dominate and tell everyone you're the best by blanket marketing, paying over the odds for staff, buying partners and all this kind of thing. But in reality, your product might not stack up to that. But it's hard to well, it's easy to convince people otherwise when you've got an unlimited amount of money. But now we're seeing, all of these layoffs as a consequence of like, we have to drive the bottom line as well as the top line. So that was quite interesting. There's quite a few people within the tech side that have changed sides in the broader tech ecosystem. I think at the top end where we sit in the vendors, the world of, when we used to go to these things, this time last year, in previous years, sorry, we probably would have been at Magento Imagine. That was replaced by Adobe Summit. That was quite generic. Their whole conference or Magento Imagine was like shrunk down to a table on the Adobe booths. That was quite interesting. We've seen a lot of people move around recently from there into other areas. We've seen a number of people resurface the likes of BigCommerce. I know you do a lot of stuff with them. Shopware seem to have been hiring commerce tools. Right. So it's interesting. Shopify's still there, but it's interesting that people have sort of jumped ship and moved around in those quarters as well. So it was the same people. They were absolutely buzzing to get together, but there was a lot of them were wearing different colors. That was sort of my takeaway.
Right.
So I think it's going to take a while for everyone's kind of suss out where we all sit again.
Right. There were some conversations that began with, and where are you again now? Right. With people we've known for a long time.
Yeah. And a few people really surprised me. I was like, oh, wow. I didn't.
Right. Right.
This business. Like,
I think there's some gold in those observations. I think, just real briefly from an SI, from an agency perspective, there have been a lot of acquisitions. That's been a pretty frothy market. And a lot of our peers now are part of a mothership, and we're not. For better or worse, I'm the owner of Irish Titan. And I think that does, offer some opportunity for us to continue to carve a lane, right? Because some of those SIs move up into a mothership and they just have a different vibe then, a little bit different soul. Mm-hmm. I think that one of the points you made, I do want to hit on a little bit, because as we know, the industry really exploded during the pandemic. We don't need to rehash a lot of that, right? Like the metric that I think best tells that story is how we had 6 years of growth in the first 6 months of the pandemic. And I think that led to a lot of institutional and easy money in the space, which I think masked some tech partners and some SIs, quite honestly, masked some of their absence of business fundamentals, right? Because over time, as you say, when the blast marketing ends and the unlimited funds end, you have to have a fundamentally solid business to succeed. And I think that it's unfortunate for those friends of ours, because we've been in the space for a long time, Tink, for those friends of ours that unfortunately suffered through some of those layoffs and were personally impacted. That's unfortunate. I think that the ecosystem, though, is stronger, right? When the herd gets thinned, the herd gets stronger. And it's unfortunate for those who suffer through that. But I think we're back in a better place because there was more attention to fundamentals and actual ability to execute, and how your platform or how your service offering furthers a merchant's business. There's still plenty of buzz, right? Like AI was talked about a lot. And so there are plenty of things on the horizon. We're fortunate enough to be in an industry that's always evolving, that's fluid, et cetera. But I just think that there's a welcome return to business fundamentals right now.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's across the board from, our customers, the clients' point of view, us as a tech partner, the vendors themselves, and yourself as an agency partner. Is we all have to drive. There's the regular economy. There was some crazy stuff going on in hiring and the cost of people, and that would have affected everyone. And that was being driven up artificially, and that was really tough. I saw a lot of people churn. Right. As a result of like being offered, things they just couldn't turn down, but ultimately last in, first out. So there are some good people out there, and I think they're probably a bit realistic. So it means we can all hire, very well at the moment. I think one of the things, as you were talking there, was really sort of resonating with me. One of the messages I was hearing, yes, everyone did thrive during the pandemic. I think there was a lot of digital transformation that happened. Mm-hmm. Everyone knew they had to get online, and there was sort of a speed to market. So sort of simple, easy tools were deployed just to get them up and running, and then they were making money, whether that was from an e-commerce point of view or the tech partners like us that sit around them. But I think now, as you say, we've now got to do things properly and take things to the next level. So this is where the more customized, more tailored approach I felt was really coming back. The type of questions we're getting is like, how do I stand out from my competition compared to like, hey, I had this cookie cup, cooker, I can't speak, I need that whiskey. I had that a solution that got me online quickly. That's great, but I look like everyone else now. I'm doing all the same things as everyone else. How do I do things different? How do I take it to the next level? And invariably, that is either a vendor change. Sometimes it could be an SI change where they're getting better strategy and advice on how to grow. And then along with that comes tools such as ourselves that have maybe a deeper, more broad remit in terms of what we can offer outside of the bog standard. But that definitely was a consistent theme across both the Adobe Summit and then Shop Talk.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because a few years prior to now, when everything was online, excuse me, oops, there goes my microphone. When everything was online, I think that it wasn't as competitive, even though everything was online, because everybody was online. There was no distraction with brick and mortar for a while, right? For an extended period of time. Now that that has reemerged, I think merchants are being challenged to how do they to stand out from their competition. And I think that's what lends itself to another point you made with some of the evolution of platforms, right? Like, we were around in the days of Magento and Salesforce and Hybris and Demandware, and then Shopify and BigCommerce came along, and now there's commerce tools and Shopware, and how that all sorts itself out, both in terms of consolidating and becoming sort of preferred tech stacks, but also how those platforms, I think, lend themselves to today and tomorrow's best practices is really interesting, because that is what merchants are looking for, right? I think that when you build your site now, you should expect as a merchant to be able to preserve budget and mind share for marketing activities, for dotdigital, and for how you can focus on acquisition, conversion, and retention. And I remember in years and eras past and prior, that was difficult to do unless you were an enterprise level merchant. There was such a lift and high total cost of ownership, high TCO in getting a site launched that you had to, I think, preserve most of your budget for maintaining that. And now merchants should expect to be able to launch a site and move on to acquisition, conversion, retention, and personalization and loyalty and how they stand out from their competitors. And I think that's a welcome step in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. I think you could throw the B2B or the D2C side of things in there. There's been a massive uptick on that. But yeah, certainly. I mean, I talked about sort of our graduation story from some dot mailer to dot digital, from email to multi-channel to now, almost a CDP. We still work with CDP partners, and we will do, because data is what drives everything. But we've made it so easy to consume data, and then the data that we have within us, we can use to improve the experience. That's the X bit of the CXDP. And that is always about delivering relevance. Relevance, I've said for years, relevancy equals results. And if you can deliver relevance because you've got all those data points and you deliver that in the right channel, with the old cliches, right message, right time, blah, 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 right. But it's always the right channel now. The end consumer's in charge of where they want to speak to you, and they might speak to you on multiple channels. So you've got to make sure that, again, from a data point of view, that everything is connected. If I'm talking to a merchant via their live chat, and maybe I'm here in Whistler, so let's talk about snowboarding. But if I'm talking about buying a new snowboard and the live chat agent recommends me, a certain size, a certain brand, a certain color, the next time an email or an SMS or WhatsApp or WeChat in China or whatever it might be, when that goes out, it should know I've had that conversation. And there's too many technologies out there, I think, that don't talk well enough at that data layer level. And that's where we worked hard to consume data, but also share back to vendors like your BigCommerce, Magentos and Shopify and so on and so forth. But you enhance that experience if you know everything about them. Don't use it in a creepy way. We all know that from days gone by. But that ability to consume stuff has really led us to sort of really talk about these data points and the DP part of the CDXP.
So I love that phrase, relevancy equals results, right? And I think that personalization is one of those topics and themes that's been discussed at Imagines and summits and e-tails and shop talks for years and years, and finally became a realistic possibility in the last few years. And you guys are helping to provide that, right? I think that personalization is real now, and merchants should be exploring that.
Yeah, I mean, talking to some of the retailers, I spent quite a bit of time, bizarrely, with some of our Australian retailers that we have that fly in. I mean, it speaks wonders of what Shop Talk is. It attracts some people from all over the world.
Right.
And yeah, I was sort of hanging around in our booth one day, and a whole contingent of them turned up, and I said, "Yeah, how's it been?" It's like, "Oh, we've just been in all the sessions." And I won't paraphrase exactly because the Australian language could be brutal, but the sentiment was same old stuff. They've been saying this in every conference for years after years after years, but now it's possible. The technology, really? Yeah, I think that's the big difference. Yeah, it's possible for everyone outside of those really huge companies with very, very deep pockets. Quite interesting. The start of this week, I did some judging. I probably shouldn't say what I've been judging on, but I was looking at some of the entries to the various categories, and in that it included the budget. And honestly, Darren, if you saw the budget, it would blow away what our costs between you and I would probably be a rounding error, and doing everything that we would normally do day to day. But it was just a big name brand that obviously have a big agency that with unlimited cash were throwing money at a problem. But nothing was spectacular or really stood out to me that isn't possible on a way cheaper budget. And in fact, all of it was like common sense, bog standard. Nothing sort of leapt out that was super innovative or anything like that. And that's something that I know an agency like yourself likes to do. You certainly act and think differently, dress differently from time to time. That's the same as well. Yeah, we have, a merchant comes on, we have a list, of a PDF that's like, here's all the things like your marketing automations that you should set up as an e-commerce merchant. It's obvious, you abandon browse, you abandon basket and all that kind of stuff. It's like the next stage is let's really understand your business. What data can we actually consume and pull in from your other systems, and how might that be used in between those other automations to augment that and do something different that your competitors might not be doing, or and what have you. So there's always the ability of looking for other angles, and I was quite surprised in these awards. I'd encourage everyone to, any Irish Titan merchant to submit to some of these awards, because you're probably doing something quite spectacularly clever that you don't think is compared to other people.
Right. I think sometimes we're all so busy working, we lose sight of some of the great work we're doing and interesting 100%. Things. So, Tink, I think one of the reasons, excuse me, that you and I connected, and Irish Titan and originally .mailer, now .digital connect, is I think both of us and our companies have sort of a strong, distinct brand, right? Like we've hired a lot of people that tend to get along because of who each of us are. But also, our businesses have evolved, right? So it's been fun and impressive seeing you move from email marketing to marketing automation, now to CXDP. But back to the brand point, Winston is part of the .digital brand, and I think now there's Winston Chat. You want to drop a little nugget there before we start to close out?
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, the people. I like you mentioned people. The shop talk was great and the people there, but I'm a big believer in a phrase at our end that we say people and products, because as we've got deeper and broader, as I say, we've changed from .mailer into what we are now, things got more sophisticated. And I've always found if you leave someone to their own devices, all they do is just mass email. That's it. That's all they've got time to really think about. So I always recommend, when looking for a partner, make sure they've got the people as well to hold your hand, to take you through that journey, or maybe even sometimes to force you to do stuff. We call it a continuous improvement plan. It's like phone them up every month and say, have you used that button yet? No. Well, what does it do? Well, the reason why I put it in there is it helps your bottom line. It improves results, and let's implement that now.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Winston is a character. think I coined the phrase a long time ago. We had what we call our data watchdog. So when people upload data, I think it's fairly unique still in the email world, where we check against a number of sources to see if the email is bad data. Is it on spam lists and what have you? So when it arrives, say at Gmail and what have you, if you send them a load of bad data, that's how you get blacklisted. So my techies are probably turning, probably going to stab me in the back when I get back home. It does a lot of very clever stuff to ensure that the data that you upload doesn't cause you damage in terms of your deliverability. And since it was called the watchdog, but since it was so techy and it was so buried, I thought we should surface him. So we brought Winston alive as a character. We're British, so we have the British Bulldog. We're proud of that heritage, and it was a way of us talking about that particular technology. Over time, it's turned into a stuffy. People now think he's a pug. I don't know if we should fight that because everyone calls him a pug, but he is a bulldog. We have like a 6'4" version. You probably saw him walking around in shops. Yep. But his most going back to the people side, something I've always wanted is like in-app help in terms of not only getting on the phone and speaking to people, but suggestions how we do stuff better. So we've just launched. Everyone's talking about AI. So we've launched Winston AI, which is currently running in beta, I believe. But it's there to sort of help people with all the content of their campaigns to make suggestions and improvements and what have you. So Winston's almost gone full circle. He's sort of spawned out of the app. He's become human and 6'4". He's skied with you probably at .ski.
Yep.
And now he's back in the app, but with artificial intelligence. So sooner or later he's going to become sentient and probably the CEO of dotdigital. There we go. That's his
Well, Winston is one of the most recognizable mascots in the ecosystem. And I have, not in my office here, but I have Winston in my office in Minneapolis. I'm in our Texas outpost now. So Winston is somebody that everybody knows and likes.
Great. Yeah, we've sat down and we physically, we had a hard battle back in the day against Bronto, who similar in culture to us, very nice people, very capable people, and very sensible, solid platform. And it wasn't too dissimilar to ours, so it was always quite difficult. But everywhere we went, the whole place was full of their bleeding inflatable dinosaurs. So
right. I remember those.
We need one of those. That's where Winston came from.
Yep. That's great. Well, Tink, as we start to close this out, is there a takeaway, a final nugget you'd like to leave the audience with?
Oh, yeah. You mentioned that earlier. I should have been thinking as I was going along. I'm kind of riffing off of what we were saying there, people. That's kind of like the last bit, platform and people get someone to help. And then where we began sort of earlier in the conversation, we talked about what we're seeing in terms of, so many acquisitions. So people have changed. People's objectives and agenda change as the new mothership might have a different agenda to what the company used to do. We've seen a number of layoffs. So I would fully make sure if anyone's making any decisions about where they move forward in terms of maybe what technology or what agencies that they are going to use, is not only check out their past credentials, don't only check out what they say they can do, is make sure that they can do, and then pair that with the people that you're ultimately going to be working with, because again, left to your own devices, you will only do the basics. And you need, I strongly believe that when a client comes on board, they become a partner. We're intrinsically linked, you and I, and the customer, and there's no hidden objective there. If the customer stays with us and they grow, they will spend more money with us. That's my agenda. If they're spending more money with us, they will be making more money themselves, and as they make more money, they'll be reinvesting in their agency. So we're very symbiotic here. We all share the same dream, aspirations, and goals, and that is to succeed. And that's a very unhidden agenda. And it's important to know who the people are as part of that triangle. Make sure that we're all going to be successful together.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that the bigger our businesses become, the more at the heart of it, we're in the people business, right? And I do a lot of speaking, and lots of times I'm asked, what's the hardest part of your job or the worst part of your job? And what I'll typically say is the people, but they're also the best and most rewarding part of the job, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of the river that runs through all of it. So I think we'll close out now. Digital and Irish Titan, there's a long history and partnership there that's near and dear to me. I don't take that for granted. Thanks for being a good friend and a good partner, Tink. Appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon. Sláinte.